of.
Most evil people you've never heard of. Vasily Blokhin.
They say that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. A quote that perfectly describes Vasily Blokhin, the deadliest executioner in known human history. Blokhin got his first taste for blood after joining the Red Army during the events of World War I. Over the years, he became the perfect soldier. One who is able to perform tasks effectively, efficiently, and without hesitation.
Real.
This of course really accelerated Blokhin's military career, as in 1921 he was recruited into the Soviet secret police organization known as the NKVD. One bonus on his extensive resume was his innate ability to remain emotionally numb when carrying out acts of violence. He simply saw it as part of the job, comparative to menial tasks like filing paperwork or having to put up with Deborah from HR's incessant complaints that your funny shirt just isn't work appropriate. Blokhin's unique skill, if you would call it that, quickly distinguished him amongst his peers. If you needed someone dead, Vasily was your guy. His work and unwavering loyalty continued to push him upward and onward. In just 6 years, he was assigned as head of a newly created branch of the NKVD by Mr. Supreme Soviet leader guy Joseph Stalin, a branch specifically designed for executions. And with that, Blokhin had become one of Stalin's most trusted workers, executing low and high-profile targets without question.
Excellent work, Blokhin. That goes right up on fridge.
During his service, Blokhin had personally executed thousands of people, including high-ranking Soviet officials during the Great Purge, an internal mass execution of anyone remotely accused of opposing Stalin's rule. Blokhin himself had been spared from the purge due to his repeated proofs of loyalty to the Soviet cause, his magnum opus being his involvement in the Katyn massacre. Now, if you've never heard of the Katyn massacre, I wouldn't be surprised. When teaching about World War II, history classes tend to focus on German war atrocities and kind of skim over all of the other ones, especially the Soviet Union's. Despite the German invasion of Poland in 1939 and World War II officially starting, the Allied powers of Great Britain and France didn't really do much in retaliation.
Oh, Germany, you better leave Poland alone.
Oh, fair point, carry on. The big bad Soviet Union had also invaded Poland just a few weeks later, capturing hundreds of thousands of Polish prisoners of war, many of which were sent to labor camps. But in the spring of 1940, around 22,000 prisoners consisting of Polish officers, engineers, teachers, and other civilians were systematically executed under Blokhin's supervision, with Blokhin himself having personally executed over 7,000 people in just 28 days. Now think about that for a second. 7,000 people in 28 days. That's 250 people a day. Now, Blokhin and his men reportedly would work 10-hour days non-stop, so that's 25 people an hour, or one person every 2 to 3 minutes. Now, these weren't indirectly through ordering his men, but this was by his own hand. Blokhin had pretty much developed an assembly line of death so efficient it would make Henry Ford envious. Prisoners would be escorted into a soundproofed room against a sandbag-lined wall. Without a word, these prisoners' last sensation would be feeling the muzzle of a German pistol in the back of their neck before being brutally murdered. Wait, a German pistol? I hear you ask. Why would Soviets be using German pistols? 2 words: plausible deniability. Think of it this way: if thousands of victims in mass graves happen to be found with German bullets lodged in their noggins, who do you think's gonna be blamed? Don't look at us, it was them. Blokhin's massacre is regarded as the largest mass murder conducted by a single person in known human history, even acknowledged by the coveted Guinness Book of World Records in 2010.
Is insane.
Really stretching for content there. It is believed that...
What time is it there? It's probably like... It's 9:45 p.m. here. Damn, it's probably daytime for y'all now. You drove all night? The what? You drove all night. That's actually insane works.
Throughout his career, Blokhin's personal kill count had reached tens of thousands, but his spree would soon come to an end. After Stalin privately passed away in a puddle of piss in 1953, Blokhin was forced into retirement in disgrace. He was ostracized by the public and stripped of his military honors during the de-Stalinization of the Soviet Union. So, of course, he did what any Russian does when they're sad or happy or breathing. He consumed a lot of alcohol, a habit that eventually led to his death in 1955 at the age of 60. Well, dang, that's pretty evil.
60's
Sure hope
pretty
nothing
old.
bad like that happens to me. Hey,
I feel like 60
it's
is
ad
old
time.
for back-
Welcome to Crossout, the ultimate post-apocalyptic vehicle shooter experience
Oh,
you've dreamt
that
about since you were a zesty little zygote.
And on mid.
What do? Why, you build your own vehicular vessel of
Mid-
violence from the wheels up in fractions of an hour, using thousands
That is
of
a
different parts
long-ass
and
drive
weapons,
for it.
then use that monstrosity to utterly decimate other makeshift creations and epic people. Oh gosh dang
Get
it!
a shit shot.
Right after the thrilling events of World War I in 1918, the Austro-Hungarian Empire had collapsed. With a little bit of elbow grease and the mashing together of various kingdoms and regions, a new political entity was formed. The state of Slovenes, Croats, and Serbs. Home to many Slovenes, Croats, and Serbs.
Who would have thought?
One of those kingdoms thrown in the mix was Croatia, the birthplace of this stern jug of juice, Ante Pavelić. His main personality trait was loving Croatia. God, he loved Croatia. So much so that he made a name for
Nationalist?
himself and rose through the ranks as a politician and representative in state parliament in order to demand Croatian independence. But this guy, Alexander I, had other ideas. Who's he? Well, he's the Prince Regent in these parts and the one who just got done unifying all of these kingdoms and states. Years and years of political turmoil ensued, which is honestly to be expected when you
Like
force a bunch of
Alexander the
different
Great.
political regions together into singularity. In 1929, now King Alexander had hit a boiling point. In order to regain order, he dismantled and banned all political parties, declaring a royal dictatorship. He even came up with a new name for his kingdom, Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia. But since Yugoslavia is not Croatia, Pavelić had it. He fled the kingdom and conspired with revolutionary groups to undermine the rule of Yugoslavia, who responded, "Do you want a death sentence? 'Cause that's how you get a death sentence." And so Pavelić got a death sentence. He was exiled to Germany, but since he didn't feel like dying quite yet, he instead skedaddled off to seek asylum in Italy. There, he used his political influence and persuasive stern look to form the
How do
Ustasha,
you get
a Croatian
political-
nationalist movement aimed at achieving Croatian
How do you get
independence by
political
any means
power in
necessary.
Italy?
And you can bet your fat tits that means bombings, assassinations, and uprisings. During said uprisings, King Alexander regrettably stated,
If you want a regime change, you need to kill me.
they did.
Shit.
On October 9th, 1934, King Alexander I was assassinated by Ustasha member Vlado Chernozemski using a handgun hidden in a bouquet of flowers. Still living in Italy, Pavelić, along with several accomplices, were determined to be culpable for the assassination and were sentenced to death by Yugoslavia's friend France, who pressured Italy to carry out the deed. And Italy was all, "Linguini fettuccini, we ask a Mussolini." Thanks to his political privileges, Pavelić was only put under house arrest for 18 months. That'll teach him.
That's
Right,
crazy.
France?
After assassination.
Oh, here we go. Looks like Germany's back at it again, and the world collectively Versailles in disappointment. After the invasion of France in 1940,
That boy
Nazi
flipped
Germany
out.
invaded Yugoslavia in
That is so
1941.
crazy as fuck,
This ultimately resulted in Pavelić being installed as dictator to a newly independent Croatia. The main mustache himself even met with Pavelić and gave some pointers in the art of ethnic cleansing. The only art he ever saw any success in. But Pavelić would soon put this advice into action. During World War II, Pavelić had created his own network of concentration camps run by his beloved Ustasha, one of which being the Sisak concentration
Like
camp,
ethnic
the
fuck.
only known camp specifically designed for children. These camps carried out the collection and mass murder of nearly 400,000 Serbs, Jews, and Romani, with an additional 300,000 either exiled or forcibly converted to Eastern Orthodox Christianity, all for the sake of Croatian ethnic homogeneity. Towns were completely ransacked, villages were outright destroyed, and hundreds of thousands of innocent lives were lost. These actions gave the Ustasha notoriety that struck fear into the hearts of anyone who dared cross their path. Nazi Army General Edmund Gleiser-Hochtenau witnessed firsthand the atrocity of Pavelić and the Ustasha, saying, quote, "Our troops have to be mute witnesses of such events. It does not reflect well on their otherwise high reputation. The Ustasha have gone raging mad." That's pretty telling when even a Nazi general thinks you're being a bad dude.
Yeah, that's
After the
insane.
Axis powers fell, Pavelić got the hell out of Dodge, eventually fleeing to Argentina in 1948. But then some other surviving Ustasha members arrived. After a quick reunion of high fives and smooches, the gang wasted no time in forming the Croatian Liberation Movement.
What?
Persistent little buggers, weren't they? They were basically
Can
trying
nobody
to
kill
control
this thing?
this from over here. It didn't work. After an assassination attempt in 1957, Pavlich hightailed it out of Argentina, eventually ending up in Spain, where he died of his injuries 2 years later. This is Idi Amin, regarded as one of the cruelest dictators in Ugandan history. He had humble beginnings back in 1946, where he served in the colonial army as a cook's assistant. In addition to cooking up a good steak, Amin was raring to have a job well done in his military career, so he speed ran through promotions within the Ugandan army, making it all the way up to captain in 1962.
I'm the captain now.
All of this impressive progress received recognition from Ugandan Prime Minister Milton Obote, and a friendship formed. Hey. Hi. One that would be fruitful in many shady activities, including ivory and gold smuggling.
Insane.
After being threatened with investigation by the Ugandan parliament, Obote overthrew King President Person Mutesa II and seized the position for himself in 1966. The ex-king was exiled to the UK, where he lamented over the loss of his country, ultimately drinking himself to death just 3 years later.
Poor little guy.
After the coup, Obote promoted a now more rotund Amin to commander of the Ugandan army. But all good times must come to an end. Obote himself was a terrible ruler. His regime was plagued with corruption and terror, resulting in nationwide starvation and cruelties toward the Ugandan people. Not surprisingly, Obote had experienced a failed assassination attempt where he was shot through the teeth and out his cheek. The assassin missed, and Obote is pissed, so in response he had any and all political parties banned, with their members jailed for life. Meanwhile, Amin was in the corner doing his own thing, building up his beloved military for less than necessary fighting in neighboring wars. Obote didn't like that, and Amin didn't like that Obote didn't like that, so they began not liking each other. As a personal bitch slap, Obote had stripped Amin of his freshly granted commanding privileges and threatened him with jail time for misappropriating military funds. But this only activated Amin's trap card, prompting a takeover of the Ugandan government while Obote was out and about doing president things. The Ugandan people, having just gone through years of suffering under Obote's regime, were pretty thrilled and cheered Amin's efforts. Now in control in 1971, Amin declared that the military would temporarily run the government until new elections could be run. He even promised to free all political prisoners. But he never did. In reality, he flew too close to the sun, taking comfort in its warmth. Just a week later, Amin declared himself President of Uganda, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Ugandan Army Chief of Staff, and Chief of Air Staff. The ego's starting to take over a bit. With this uncontested power, Amin began systematic executions of anyone who, he believed, would oppose his rule. Roughly 15,000 civilians had disappeared, now believed to have been kidnapped and given front row tickets to Amin's newly constructed state-of-the-art torture facility. However, this failed to slake Amin's thirst for blood. He soon expanded his list of victims to various groups throughout the country. We're talking artists, journalists, lawyers, students, senior members of government, foreign nationals, anyone who had even the most infinitesimally small tie to Obote. There were even rumors of Amin being a cannibal, or at least having tasted human meat, though it seems like he rated it 1 star as it was, quote, too salty for him. Human rights organizations estimate that between 300,000 to 500,000 people were slain under Amin's tyrannical rule. Known as the Butcher of Africa, Idi Amin not only murdered his own people, but devastated the Ugandan economy as well. He had expelled around 80,000 business owners and seized their property. So Amin walked up to an African stand and he said to the man running the stand, "Hey, bum bum bum,
Get out of here or I'll kill you."
Then he waddled away, waddle waddle. These businesses, which were basically the country's economic backbone, were handed off to his inner circle. And they all quickly went bankrupt from mismanagement. Edie? More like idiot. Anyway, the businesses accounted for about 90% of the government's tax revenue, so government funds went poof. Yeah, just like that. Amin became blinded with power, so much so that he was unable to see the inevitable brick wall that the country was heading towards. His closest cabinet members, realizing that murdering everyone and crippling an economy aren't really the best long-term policies, started to defect, abandoning Uganda to seek safety elsewhere. Amin even began losing control over his own military. Coups and mutinies were commonplace as officers fought for power. But he had a plan. I have a plan. We're gonna take Tanzania. Alley-oop. He's just not as funny as oversimplified.
Insane works.
Uh-oh. Tanzania fought back. Hard. In order to save face, the former 10-time Ugandan light heavyweight champion Amin had a plan. I have a plan.
Oh,
Yeah,
boxer, too.
Amin actually suggested a boots to asses 1v1 super slam, but the Tanzanian president had a plan of his own. In
Why
the
would he
end,
not
Amin was
just-
deposed and fled in exile, where he
Literally.
apparently ate up to 40 oranges a day until his death in 2003.
Why would they not just attack him?
Our last stop
country.
is definitely no picnic.
But why do these
Now,
people
if this
get to
video
live
wasn't
and
satisfying
escape?
enough, I do have more of these little evil bastards for another video.
Yeah,
So
half a
if you want me to
million
make
people
it, let me know in the
potentially
comments.
be
While you're at it,
escapes
let me know
and
who
live
you would want me to
lives
cover.
happily.
For our last entry, we'll be taking a trip down to Colombia. Now, any of you Colombians out there might be familiar with this guy, but for those of us who don't put cheese in our hot chocolate, let me introduce you to Luis Garavito, perhaps one of the most prolific serial killers in modern history. This guy was a straight-up monster. Appropriately nicknamed La Bestia, or The Beast, Garavito was arrested in 1999 and convicted of murdering 193 children. Garavito's crimes began when he was just 15 in 1972. He had
193
reportedly
people
suffered
isn't
severe
that bad.
depression, psychosis, and
Compared to
paranoia,
half a
allegedly
million?
stemming from an extremely abusive and traumatic childhood at the hand of his father. Pairing all that mental anguish with crippling alcoholism and an aggressive personality,
Like, then half a million
Garavito began
definitely had
compulsively
children in it.
forcing himself on young children. Disgusted
That's
by his
fucked.
own actions, he had attempted to seek help, attending church sermons, AA meetings, and even seeing
Also, there's
psychiatrists,
no
wanting nothing
excuses for
more than
shit
to live
like
a
this
normal,
under
happy
any
life.
circumstance.
But he was never able to claw himself out of the dark
Especially
hole that he was in.
considering-
Look,
especially
there's no
considering
denying that childhood trauma
who
is
have
tragic,
trauma
but
like
when
this
you
don't
commit
do shit
unspeakable
like
acts of
this.
violence against innocent children, or really anyone for that matter, sympathy kind of goes out the window.
Especially for
Being a
people who
victim's
don't
one
deserve
thing,
that.
creating victims is another.
Literally.
Moving into the 80s, Garavito's habits had only escalated. He emphasized that his urges to act out were constant and, according to him, uncontrollable. He would impulsively assault homeless children, and to make matters worse, began carrying razor blades and lighters to satiate his growing lust for violence. After each outburst and eventually regaining his composure, Garavito claimed that he would be overwhelmed with guilt. He would write down the names of his victims in a notebook and pray for their safety.
Lock this
At this
nigga.
point, his
Kill
victim
this
count had
nigga.
crossed above 100. Devastated by his supposedly uncontrollable impulses, he desperately tried to find any answers as to why he was the way he was. He looked to religion, astrology, the occult, really anything that could potentially bring him some revelation. But during this little literary leap, he had stumbled upon a certain notorious autobiography. With each turn of the page, Garavito really started relating to this Adolf guy. I mean, they both suffered abusive childhoods, lived in poverty, are both complete dickholes, you know, that kind of stuff. Luis even went a bit further and began idolizing one Campo Delgado, a Colombian serial killer who had publicly murdered 28 people, including his own mother, in the 1980s. More specifically, he admired the national attention that Delgado received and wanted to experience that firsthand. Now, the 1990s is where Garavito really went off the rails. He was now apathetic in his crimes. He felt nothing. No remorse, no sorrow, nothing.
Crazy.
With all emotional ties cut, Garavito's actions hit an apex. Across this decade, Luis committed the mass murder and assault of hundreds of children. In disguise, he lured victims into secluded areas in broad daylight where they were assaulted, stabbed, cut, burned, beaten, eviscerated, and dismembered. After their passing, the victims were often placed in dozens of mass graves scattered across the countryside, with some containing as many as 40 bodies. Now, you can't really hide violence of that caliber for long, so eventually the graves were discovered in 1998, and an official investigation was launched. Because of his continued alcoholism, Garavito's work was sloppy. He would often leave articles of clothing, empty liquor bottles, and various belongings at his crime scenes. Honestly, it's kind of weird that it took so long to get caught, but the mountains of evidence did eventually lead to his arrest in 1999. While being interrogated, Garavito confessed to the murder of hundreds of children. Now, of course, in order to prevent the large, sandpapery, unlubed fist of YouTube from giving my butthole an identical neighbor, I of course cannot go into the nitty-gritty of the crimes. You morbidly curious little deviants would have to look that up for yourselves. But I'll say I didn't warn you. In the end, Garavito's crimes rightfully warranted a sentence of up to 1,853 years and 9 days in prison. That's pretty great. except for the fact that Colombian law at the time prevented any sentence from being longer than 40 years. And get this, since he had given a full confession and even helped investigators find the bodies, his sentence was further reduced down to just 22 years, and the Colombian population was pissed. But luckily, in 2021, Garavito's parole was personally denied by the Colombian president, who vowed that he would never be a free man again. And he never was. Luis Garavito was diagnosed with eye cancer and died in prison in 2023.
Good.
That video was a real doozy, wasn't it? Looks like you need to clean your mind of all this negativity. So go ahead and click the link below to play Crossout. It's free, these bonuses are free, you'll be filled with glee, tee hee hee. Just play it. It's fun. Okay. If you do want to dive deeper down the rabbit hole of other horrors humanity has wrought throughout history, check out these videos. I'll see you over there.
That's just fucked. Let's figure this out. We are going to be playing 60 seconds, so this might be good to learn.
None of you work as a team! Where's the lamb sauce?
Those idiots always forget the lamb sauce. Well, that sucks. Looks like you are in for another round of survival, but hey, at least the witch wasn't part of this one, right? Right, so let's see what you're made of. I'm gonna go narrate from a safe distance. Good luck. Alright, so first you're gonna need to assess any immediate damage and take stock of what you have. Or you could panic and make hasty decisions instead. See what happens when you panic? Now, take a deep irradiated breath and just think for a second here. Judging by the fact that the nuclear plant is like right there, it's safe to say that you're well within the danger zone. Hope that cheaper house price is worth it. Your immediate and best move is to go back into your house and shelter in place, since you know that there's at least some food and water there. Make sure all of your windows and doors are sealed shut to keep out any unwanted radiation and or people. Desperate times create desperate people. Also, try to stay in the center of your house or bunker down in the basement. You might also want to take the time to contact those you care about. Oh wait, in this hypothetical scenario, you're a complete loner who doesn't have much in the ways of loved ones. Except your buddy Ron. But you never invite him over. Oh well, the less people you have in your life, the less you have to be concerned about in an emergency situation. Who needs loved ones? Not you. Hypothetically, of course. Also, your phone has no signal thanks to extreme network congestion and plot-convenient factors. They never work when you need them to. Speaking of people, be glad you're not out in that traffic jam. They're about to learn a thing or two about nuclear fallout. See, when a nuclear source detonates, that explosion will vaporize and launch a bunch of stinky radioactive material out over yonder. Fallout can come in many flavors, ranging from small sand-like particles to large heavy debris and even a mediocre franchise. Either way, this stuff is deadly. Any form of contact will likely result in radiation burns. What's radiation? It's just traveling energy. Heat from the sun? Radiation. Wi-Fi? Radiation. Your buddy Raymond from Japan? Radiation. These examples, though, are considered low-energy radiation, also known as non-ionizing radiation, meaning that they aren't strong enough to cause any physical harm. Except Ray. Nuclear radiation, however, can, and it will. You can think of high-energy or ionizing radiation as a bunch of itty-bitty fists just penetrating your soft, vulnerable body and beating the ever-loving crap out of your internal molecules, particularly your DNA. Now here's a lesson for you. Your DNA is your genetic information, passed on to you through many generations. Your mom, your dad, your grandparents too. Some from Emo Mary and the balls of Grandpa Lou. Looking like a ladder with a big old twist, it's pretty complicated, but you'll get the gist. All these little rungs determine all your bits. Brown eyes, quick wits, thick thighs or nice tits. Are you breathing without heaving, maybe blinking without thinking? Then thank your DNA for all the heavy lifting. Adenine for A, cytosine for C. Guanine is your G and thymine is your T. With the C to the G and the T to the A is what keeps you alive at the end of the day. Now, if this rhyme made your dopamine spike, then hit that subscribe or at least give a like. Thank you. Anyway, if you leave yourself unprotected, then all of that high energy radiation comes in and just gives your DNA a what for, severing them critical bonds and altering your genetic code, which will more or less lead to developmental issues and cancer down the road.
One positive about nuclear fallout is that its radioactivity
Cancer very
decays
close.
very fast. According to the US Department of Health and Human Services, within the first 7 hours, the fallout has already lost 90% of its dose rate of radiation. If you wait a full 48 hours, that increases to 99%. Sure, I wouldn't advise making dust angels in it, but it's better than what happened to those traffic jam people.
Yeah. Is that halfway?
Poor souls. The point is, patience and planning will get you through this.
Yeah, I guess maybe it
Ooh,
is
looks
better
like you
to
got
wait.
company.
Yo, dude, it's Rod. Open up.
The mysterious voice at the door, as he just identified himself, is Ron. He's your best and only friend going on 4 years now, ever since you both wore that same shirt at that one bar at
best and
that
only
one time.
friend?
Bro. Yeah, guy friendships are that simple. Now Ron, he's always had this weird obsession with end of the world scenarios like this, so I'm sure he will use this situation as a big ol' I told you so. I told you so. See? Of course I had to invite myself over, but dude, we gotta get a move on. Don't worry, I know what to do. I've sunk so many hours into Atomfall. Okay, sure, yeah, I'll just grab... Wait, what's Atomfall? I'm glad you asked.
Wait.
Atomfall is a brand new single-player first-person
nigga
action
got
survival
me.
game developed by Rebellion. You know, the studio behind Sniper Elite and Zombie Army. Oh, I love carve our own path, make our own choice. Let's go.
For the game.
It's been a few weeks with Ron, and things are going pretty well. Luckily, with like 3/4 of the population dying in gridlock, resources are still pretty plentiful. You've both managed to hunker down in a grocery store, which is conveniently constructed next to a home improvement facility. That's pretty neat. But let's face it, humans are opportunists, so if there's chaos and confusion, people will take advantage. Sure, some looting and stuff happened, but oddly enough, the majority of things taken were TVs and shoes. And that's lucky for you, since those things are, as far as I know, inedible. Sure, you'd figure that the government might have helped out by now, but when the emergency services budget has been diverted to researching the long-term effects of Asmongold political commentary, there's not much for wiggle room.
Yeah, this is gonna keep getting worse.
As for food, you want to prioritize anything that is
That
sealed,
was
especially
actually
with
funny.
high water content, as they are the least likely to be affected by radiation since radiation can't swim. Things like canned meats, canned vegetables, and oh no way, they even have...
Canned bread? What the fuck?
Since this grocery store has backup generators,
beans are good,
refrigerated
though.
and frozen foods are still on the menu. If you
Canned
can figure
beans
out a
are
way to
good
safely cook them, of
because
course.
They have a lot of protein as
Brats.
well.
Uh-oh. Looks like the store manager isn't too happy about you
Protein,
fingering his
that's gonna
foods.
save
You'll have to pay for that, you know.
Time for a
you need
choice.
protein.
What's a plumber's favorite drug?
We just want to live.
Crack. You said you weren't gonna. I lied.
Gonna have to kill him now.
Ron, do you think we're gonna make it out of here? Of course, dude. Why do you ask? I just think we should be making progress away from here, away from all of this chaos and this radiation. I mean, sure, but it's all radioactive out there. Actually, all the radiation is being blown northwest of here. As long as you keep to the southeast for a few hundred miles, you should be good.
You wouldn't
So
know that
why haven't you
because you
left?
wouldn't know the
Do you
way.
really care? No. Well, you probably want radiation suits like these ones just in case though, but these are for me and my son here. Can we have those? Hell no. Please?
Hit it. Oh my god. Dead by
Okay,
Daylight
nice work.
reference.
You've managed to figure out a way to safety, but you can't go unprepared. You're gonna need to find some equipment for the journey ahead.
Good
You shimmy
shit.
your way over to the hardware place next door to look for supplies. With some luck, you're able to find some cloth, 3 logs, and a rope. With some elbow grease and a bit of know-how, you're able to craft these into something useful. That should work. You also grab a sweet axe as a precaution,
Maybe just
placing
hit
all of the
Walmart.
items in your back pocket to save precious time on animation. You ready to go, Ron? Let's do it.
You really could have hit Walmart and got a shot.
Oh, that needs some WD-40. Yep.
For sure.
You traverse through the remnants of the town and make your way
Among
towards
Us,
the
that
southeast.
WD-40
On
really
your way,
works
you
like
pass by
magic, though.
dozens of poor unfortunate souls who have succumbed to the effects of radiation poisoning. This stuff is not fun in the slightest. If your
That shit
unprotected
really
body
does
gets
loosen
absolutely
anything.
assaulted by ionizing radiation, you're in for a world of hurt.
You're dead.
Literally. I'm sure you're familiar with the famous Chernobyl nuclear disaster in 1986. The firefighters and operators during that event learned very quickly that death can be an invisible beast. After generous exposure to radiation emanating from the nuclear plant's reactor core, these men endured unfathomable pain and suffering for weeks. Immediate symptoms included radiation burns, intense nausea and vomiting, headaches, and diarrhea. Those that could be were rushed to the Pripyat hospital, where they had to be stripped of their contaminated clothes that continued to bombard their bodies with radiation, even while being miles from the original source. Those clothes were abandoned in the hospital's basement and are still down there emitting levels of radiation to this day, albeit not nearly as dangerous. Over the following weeks, these men's bodies severely deteriorated, forming painful burns and bleeding blisters with extreme hair loss and a constant state of confusion and dizziness. In the end, 28 firefighters who responded to the Chernobyl disaster died of acute radiation syndrome. But there's nothing cute about being turned into a human hemorrhoid. Now luckily, you're past the point of this being a problem for you. It's probably best if you trail off from the beaten path. After all, you never know if any of the other survivors you encounter will be friend or foe. You trek through the woods for a few days, living off of various non-perishables and bottled water from your convenient off-screen inventory. But supplies are starting to run a bit low, and you think you might need to start foraging. But hold on. Remember that nuclear contamination can spread far beyond the original site, even if it isn't directly downwind. So animals, plants, and water sources can still be contaminated. So unless you carry a reverse osmosis filtration plant between your cheeks, you're SOL.
I do not.
Looks like you need to search elsewhere for food and water. But it also looks like Ron is about to be in danger.
Oh, look at this little fella. You gotta come over here and take a look at this little powder puff. He's so dang cute.
Ron?
What? Oh, shit.
There! A cave! Bears hate caves!
Good enough for me.
Cave bear question mark?
You might want to hurry up a bit.
We made it. You okay, Ron? Ron? Are you okay?
That nigga is dead.
You take the time to mourn the loss of your fallen friend, but the solemn silence is broken by a noise deeper in the cave. You even notice some light and are determined to investigate. Now, under normal circumstances, you really shouldn't be wandering willy-nilly into a cave like this. It's a surefire way to end up trapped or wedged in some narrow cave system dubbed Satan's Prolapse. But there is an angry bear outside that just murdered your friend, so this might be a better alternative. Let's see what lies ahead. Hello? 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 Hello?
Wait, why would you?
I hate cultists. Well, that was certainly a choice. Looks like you're the new owner of a weird little worshipping cave. Probably some sweet loot here. You scavenge and swipe what you can. Some food, materials,
Why
but
would you ever
something else catches your eye. Well, that's definitely magical, but certainly evil. And there's an inscription underneath. Survival you have learned, so now you must return. Just flip me thrice, but some advice, that witch will need to burn. Are you really gonna trust some evil artifact you just found in a cultist's cave? Why not? Alley-oop.
Insane.
I'm back.
Niggas were really following.
Hey, Cityville Nuclear Power Plant? We have a witch problem. No, this isn't a prank. Hey, Ron, do you want to come over?
Where's the lamb sauce?
Well, that was fun.